the investment that you have put in your body, the time commitment and the strength training or the mileage you put in, it doesn't disappear just because the race does not happen. It's within your body. So what you need to do is take the proper time to recover and get ready for the next race. Start working on your weaknesses.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 180 of the Running For Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I have a special one for you. This is a guest I know you love, and believe it or not, this is the first time he has been on his own on this podcast. I have interviewed him the previous time, but this is the first time he's been solo on here, which is kind of crazy. But you know by now that I really like to kind of get guests with different questions. I like to make the topics different. I'm not really a chasing the news kind of person when it comes to guests. And Meb has always been very in demand. So yeah, I guess that gives it away, doesn't it? Meb Keflezighi is on the show today, but he's always been someone, well, at least since I've been podcasting, who has been, in demand on podcasts all over the place. And I didn't really want to just be one of many that people could listen to. I like being able to step back a bit and to really think about some questions that are going to challenge people. I did do that today. I think I asked Meb mostly questions he's never been asked before on podcasts. And, we had a great conversation. He's very real. He's very just positive and upbeat and kind. And you just see everything about him he's just a good role model for us all to learn from. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode with Meb. As I said, there are some kind of more challenging questions in there for him. And I think you might enjoy getting to kind of hear that side of them. Although I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous asking some of these because it seemed kind of like insulting to ask someone as like well respected and loved as Meb. And so it was a bit scary to kind of go out there a bit with the questions, but at the same time, that's something I also pride myself on is being able to ask those questions that we may be wondering inside, but never actually say. So I'm proud of myself for doing that. I just want to take a moment to thank our three sponsors for this episode, Vital Farms, Generation You Can, and Tifosi. I'll be telling you a little bit more about each of them in the episode, but thank you so much for listening. Let's go meet Meb. Thank you to Vital Farms for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast and for supporting me. I truly appreciate this brand. And if you've not tried their products, you absolutely should. I really pride myself on which brands I work with. And when it comes to like fresh eggs, which is kind of what they're known for, the ones that come in the grocery store, they're in that black box with kind of chalk-like writing on them. And again, unfortunately, I'm talking to US only here right now. Those eggs are the best ones that I can find in the grocery store. The other ones the color of the yolk is bright yellow. It's the closest thing I can get to just having a friend down the road who has some chickens that they give me eggs in a box. These are delicious. They are, like I said, bright yellow, so you know that they are quality and just the chickens are looked after and they are raised correctly. So Vital Farms has now gone beyond just giving us great eggs, and they also have this ghee that they have brought out. Now, ghee, if you don't know, it is a cooking agent. You can use it, you could use it on butter, on toast, instead of butter, I should say. You can use it on toast, on popcorn, on anything you would use butter on, but it's just a much richer butter. So I like to use it like a spoonful of it in with maybe 2 or 3 big sweet potatoes or potatoes, roasting them up in the oven. I'm telling you, friends, give it a try. It just steps it up a whole new level. It is just so, so good. You can use it for any vegetables or any cooking that you need, and it's got a high smoke point, so it does do well with that. Now, on that note, I know it can be difficult to find things like this, and Whole Foods is actually the only place that does currently have it. However, you can enter to win a year's free supply by going to vitalfarms.com/ghee. That's vitalfarms.com/GHEE. That's GHEE. I know that's spelled a bit weird in our English kind of we expect things in a certain way sense, but I'm sure there is a reason it is called ghee, and I'm sure one of you will tell me the reason for the name. But my friends, go check out Vital Farms and enter to win a year's free supply. That means you don't have to buy it. You can put it on all the foods you want. You can do it for all your cooking, because we all know that oils can be very expensive if you want to get quality ones. This is so good. And you know it's coming from a good company, coming from Vital Farms. Go to vitalfarms.com/ghee. Meb, welcome back to the Running For Real podcast. This is the first time I've had you on your own, which is crazy because this is episode, I think, 180. So I'm a bit embarrassed to say this is the first time I've ever had you on my own, but welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Tina. Thanks for having me. I think it's a lucky number. That's why we're waiting for 180.
That's exactly it. 180, the lucky number. No, I will put a link in the show notes for anyone to go listen to the podcast I did do with Meb and Rachel Pratt and, oh, my mind is blanking on who the third, and Jenny, of course, yeah. And Jenny Simpson, the third guest at the New York Roadrunners Run Center. So I'll put links to that in the show notes. Meb, so most people by now know your story. They know you're the 2004 silver medalist in the Olympics. They know you're the winner of New York and Boston marathons. You've done the rounds of podcasts. So I'm going to challenge you here today. I gave you a warning of this before we started recording, but for those listeners, I've warned Meb, so you don't have to think I'm a horrible person just throwing things at him, but he's been warned. Are you ready to be challenged a little today with these questions?
I sound like a marathon, we know the warning's coming, so no problem. Let's do it.
Exactly. And that's what I said to you, that you're prepared. You've had hours and hours and hours of podcasts and interviews. So this is not going to be a problem for you. But firstly, okay, this coming out, we're all in a bit of a strange situation. You also have the unique thing that I'm recording this with you just a few days before this is going to come out live. Most of my podcasts, I'm about 2 or 3 months ahead. But this time I can actually ask you about something going on right now. So how are you handling this situation that we find ourselves in right now?
Oh, most definitely. This is a tough situation. We never have experienced such a thing. I'm in Tampa, Florida with my family and, been indoors. I think when I'm not traveling, I'm always with family. So it's not something new to me where I have to go to bars or go out too much. We don't do that as a family, only on Sundays or special occasions. So I guess we've kind of been trained for someone like this. And growing up as my parents, we were always ate indoors. Ate at home. We never went really out. So I've never been a movie person where I have to go to the movies unless now last couple of years or so with our daughters, they wanted to go new movie coming out, then we've been to that. But other than that, it's not a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
I have to go to therapy or a doctor or whatnot. That's the only reason I leave. Otherwise, I'm content being home. Yeah.
I think that's probably the case for a lot of people listening, that it is, especially if someone either has a job that requires them to be at home or, is an athlete. Yeah, it's not too different in many ways. But what is something that you are missing, or what is something that you didn't expect to be kind of as different staying in as it actually is?
I've been in third world country where the food is scarce. We can't get more than 3 kilos or 5 kilos of sugar. And to be able to go to the store and to tell you can't have more than 1 eggs a packet, or you can have more than 1 milk, or more than 2 paper towels and things like that. Did not expect that in the United States. Growing up in Eritrea and whatnot, we have seen some of that before. You can't have too much bread or whatnot, but you go to the stores and you run out of water, you run out of essentials. That's a little terrifying, and that I didn't expect it. I just moved to Tampa, Florida, where hurricane season is here. So I was kind of a little bit of Hurricane Dorian when the warning was on. I was a little bit of kind of had a head warning to see what's going on, and I went to 3 stores and they said ran out of water. I'm like, oh, what? I start panicking, but I give a lot of advice not to panic. To people, control what you can control, but at the same time, that was the first time, but I think that some of the people from Gasparilla Distance Classic came to the rescue, brought some water just in case. So being a runner, you are always connected to the community, and they're there to help you and support you, not only during the races, but also throughout everyday life, especially in a challenging situation like this.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing that I have, and many of the listeners have seen, that this community, you're seeing the heart come out every day. Runners, our community that we are in, you're just seeing so much good. People are doing what they can. They're giving more, doing things that they don't need to do to try and make others feel better. I really feel like this is kind of even showing the bright lights that our running community is. And that's exactly what you're talking about right there. We always the running community wants to help one another, regardless of whether things are good or bad. Have you seen any evidence of that within your own life?
Well, there is a little bit. I see many people walking and saying being friendly, but in terms of the social distancing, is a little bit kind of not what we runners or the running community is used to. Usually they're kind and good gesture and whatnot, but because of you don't want to know where that person happened or you've been there to be able to just go to somebody's house. But I'm pretty sure even calling my wife is like, well, we should do more. But with social distance, it's kind of hard just because you don't know where the other people have been. But usually runners are, hey, come over to my house or let's go for a run or let's have a social event just to kind of pass the time. But unfortunately with this one is, people could laugh have done more, but the severity of it being contagious as it is difficult to pour your heart out just because the ifs but I always, a good friend of mine from Mission Hills, San Diego just sent me, says, you always say run to win. And now she says, stay in to win, and you have to be able to just tell people those kind of things. So even though, nationwide that we can even do, I wish somebody, named David in Boston, happy birthday through Zoom. And I was able to do with Tim Hoyt, with Tim Hoyt who do the wheelchair at the Boston Marathon and San Diego. They had a Zoom call, social nationwide, and sometimes even was to Canada. So we were able to do that for them. So,
that's cool.
You might not be at the doorstep or next mile running with somebody, but you can always still touch people throughout the virtual media.
Absolutely. So when you're on your runs right now, have you had a drastic drop in the amount of people asking you for selfies now? Because I imagine you get asked all the time when you're out running and people probably are like, stay away from me.
Yeah, no, that hasn't been the case. I'm usually the person that gives them high fives. If I see somebody run on the dirt on a bike path, but they're choosing the dirt, I'm saying, that's smart, give them a high five.
Even now you're still high-fiving?
No, I have not done high five since then. And I haven't been running as much since because I have I had a little shoulder injury that I did to myself, and then I haven't been running, but I ran to some familiar faces. They just give me thumbs up. I usually do thumbs up anyways myself. But I was running with named Josh, who's a local guy in Tampa, and then he goes, "We're running together." Within, we gave the elbow or whatever, and then he's like, "I thought let's do a selfie," and he's like, "Well, we're gonna have to do the social media distance." It's a funny picture, but I haven't tweeted about it because that's what it's not meant to be. But he's like, we kind of got to be 6 feet away from each other.
I know. It's definitely a bit of a strange situation to find yourself in. And then speaking of good things that we have found come out of this, what is something you're appreciating more, or that you've become more, you've noticed more gratitude for, that this situation has forced upon you?
Well, first and foremost, I like to wish everybody my prayers and thoughts are with the people that have been affected, families, whether it's in New York or in Washington or even in California, my hometown, that's been touched in a big way. And they might not be able to get out as much. But what I have figured out about this is I went to the store and got a lot of games, spent time with the girls. Usually I'm traveling a lot. Whether it's Monopoly or card game or Pictionary and things like that, just to be able to just spend some time. But, I'm grateful for being able to spend time with the kids. We are fortunate enough in Tampa to go out and play a little bit of soccer in the driveway, or there's a little basketball net there, and I claim myself as a soccer player, so I'm dribbling the ball, trying to score in the net of a basketball with my foot. So that's kind of been fun, and my daughters are watching doing that and having fun.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, I would imagine there's a big percentage of kids right now who are happier now than they were before, because all of a sudden their parents are home, they're playing with them, they're doing things with them, and my daughter's only 2, so this is a bit more relevant to me, but like they're sleeping very, very regularly. Not that she was a bad sleeper before, but it's very like almost to the minute, her sleep cycles. And I wonder, kids, if you took an overall like happiness scale, they'd probably be happier during this time than they were when we were up and doing things all the time. So it's very interesting to think about, and yeah, it does make you grateful for sure.
We are at their disposal,
Exactly. Yeah, there's no hiding this time.
Absolutely. Yeah. But for me, when I'm usually traveling the weekend, but my wife works from home, I'm at home most of the time except the weekend. So, they're used to that. But now I know there's other kids that are more appreciative of their parents being more around. So, which is something positive.
Mm-hmm, for sure. All right. So with races postponed, if you can look back, how do you think you would have handled what's going on, knowing that, for this coming out now, you could have been training for Boston. Had this been 2014, how would you have handled that, like in your prime years, knowing that all these races are postponed or cancelled?
Yeah, I mean, with cancellation or postpone of races is very difficult as an athlete, as a race director, as a volunteer or a sponsor, but we can only do what we can control. The only time that I have experience of cancellation race was the New York City Marathon due to Hurricane Sandy in 2012. And, when races are postponed early on, at least you can refigure your training and whatnot. But like the New York for me, it was, for the city was devastating, but also for me was because for me, I took 5 days off to Italy and get back to the train after the London 2012 Olympic Games where I finished 4th. I'm like, I think I can win New York. I took 5 days for vacation to Italy and worked very hard, knowing that on Monday, November 3rd, I think it was, or that Monday was going to be off. And when we heard that, I remember my brother and manager Howie said, hey, let's see if you want to do another race, Fukuoka or Honolulu or whatnot. Because of the Olympics, because training for New York, my mind and body and thing was done. I didn't want to race another race. So I can understand the demand that you put on your body. And when things are canceled last minute, is very devastating. But we have to understand what it is at stake, the health. The health is very important. And it was for the city of New York due to Hurricane Sandy. And now globally, the health is at risk. So I know I'm a big fan of the Olympics, but I think they made the right decision. Sometimes you don't want to be too spoken out early because, you don't want to hurt the athletes or you don't want to know what the position of the IOC stands for. But I'm pretty sure I was at peace with that. That's going to happen. But to postpone it now is, it's not next week, it's not next month or not in 3 months. So you just got to get together, huddle your team and people who support you, people who are there to encourage you and reset to make the qualifying team. And if you have made the Olympic team, you know what? You have the peace of mind more than anybody else in the Olympic trials, because now, especially with the U.S. Marathon, they already know who's going to be on the team. Just scale back, relax. You can say go vacation, but it's not the time to go vacation. But you can calm down and say, what have I done right for getting ready for the trials? What I did not do right? Now, how can I maximize my peak performance for the Olympic Games? So it's time to just look at the calendar and refocus. But there's like Boston postponing or other races that unfortunately the cancellation is a big hit on the athlete, but also greater hit on the race directors and the city and the community. So I always tell life it's a challenge. Sometimes injuries are part of the sport, and disappointment is part of life. But we have to look at the greater picture of what's online, and we have to take 2 steps back to gain 10 steps forward. So don't be hard on yourself. Just learn from this and how we can come back stronger. And for me, the 2013 Boston, it was devastation mentally, physically, and emotionally was one of the things. But we can always work hard and do our part. And for me, that afternoon, Bonnie Ford from ESPN.com asked me if I was going to come back. And I remember telling her that evening, I said, I have to be healthy enough to win it for the people. So reset your goals and get your priorities right, and you're going to be fine.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm glad you also mentioned the race directors and, the people involved, the volunteers, all that, because I think so often we're seeing people getting angry or frustrated. Most people understand, but obviously there are some people who, get angry at the race directors and the organizations, and it really isn't their fault. They don't want to put it off any more than anyone else wants it to be cancelled. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And
I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I'm a part owner of the Carlsbad 5,000 and Silicon Valley Half Marathon. I'm on that side with, as a partner of the business. It's devastating, but we want to give it to the people. But at the same time, it's easy to say health comes first, and we have to apply that and just think about the long term, not just this year. And I remember telling that to the New York Road Runners. I said, they need us more than we need them right now. So just be diligent, be loyal to the New York Road Runners, and they will get your back going forward. And that's why we have to think about those race directors. Yes, it's a challenging time for the family that had goals that wanted to do those races, but those race organizers not only have one, but many other races that had a plan. So we have to be there for them and encourage them to keep going.
Absolutely, especially with companies like New York Road Runners. They give us so much. There's so much free stuff they do. So we definitely need to give them a little bit of slack in addition to many of the other companies involved in various races. Now, you've already mentioned kind of, some setbacks that you've had, but just for someone who is in this situation and is just really feeling like I was in my peak shape, I was ready to go. This was going to be my year to break 4 in the marathon or to get my Boston qualifier or whatever it may be. But if we look back to, you mentioned about that New York race, you said you were in great shape, or we'd look at, Boston 2014, you'd essentially already been written off, and you were coming back from this kind of tough period in your life. So what would you like to remind listeners who are in these setbacks right now, what that could mean for them in the future? Like what happened for you in Boston 2014, what's going on right now teach them and lead to ultimately if they kind of stick in it?
The investment that you have put in your body, the time commitment and the strength training, the mileage you put in, it doesn't disappear just because the race does not happen. It's within your body. So what you need to do is take the proper time to recover and get ready for the next race. Now you can start working on your weaknesses. Even though you can't go run, do the strength training at home, whether it's core drills or push-ups and pull-ups and some crunches. I think, for example, for me, 4th at the Olympic Games 2012, I really thought I was not ideally ready for that race, but it gave me hope that I still got this opportunity to win another New York or win Boston or make another Olympic team. So you have those things, but that race determines the internal inside of you, what you are made of. So you have worked extremely hard to be the peak shape now. And unfortunately, Mother Nature and other circumstances are winning at this point, but don't let that setback make you give up for the rest of your life. That you need to be resilient and say, you know what? Okay, this happened. I can't control it, but I am happy what I did right to get me to this kind of shape. How can I maximize it the next time around, whether it's get a qualifying for the Boston Marathon or running a personal best or, breaking 4 hours and things like that. And it's in you. You just got to, hey, I got to take the time out, that unnecessary forced time out, and then control what I can and then come back stronger.
So true. Thank you so much. And what about for someone who is in this situation, who's really just struggling to get out the door? They're thinking, what is the point? I don't know when I'm going to be able to race again. I don't have, maybe I can only race in the spring. Full races aren't really going to work for me. What can I do? I just feel completely defeated. What would you say to that person?
Well, for the person that is struggling to take the next step because you worked extremely hard and now like, well, they have the motivation to go. Well, think hard. You are in a better position than most people are. You can go if you are allowed to go outside and exercise. And if you're not, you can do so many things that are indoors. And I don't want to be a salesman here, but there's a book called Meb Keflezighi that I wrote with Scott Douglas. There's a lot of exercises that you can do inside the house without living, not going to the gym and things like that. And you will be back. It's just a matter of time. And if you are able to go run, don't kill yourself because you don't know what the next race is going to be. So don't work too hard, but go outside, get exercise in because it's going to be a stress relief. Go outside, and don't take that for granted because there's a lot of people that can't get out of the house. So this is a win-win situation in terms of exercise to just say, hey, I'm going to be the best that I can doing indoor stuff or going outside. Whereas people who are sick, think of that. I want to be able to do it for the person that cannot breathe right now. I want to be able to the person who cannot walk anymore. So when you go out, you don't take things for granted.
Thank you to Generation UCAN for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, I have been using UCAN for several years now. It is a stable, stomach-friendly fuel for my running and, honestly, more often the case, my busy life right now. I love adding UCAN to my smoothies for a long-lasting energy boost, and my daughter Bailey has also got really into having her daily smoothie, which I love that we can do it together. And I'm absolutely thrilled about the new UCAN Energy Plus Protein with long-lasting energy powered by Superstarch, which is a plant-based pea protein, or you can get grass-fed whey protein to repair and rebuild your muscle, sustain your energy, or prevent that post-exercise crash. And I mentioned the pea protein there. This is really exciting, and I'm really enjoying that we have this option now. And I know that many of you have felt excluded by many different protein powders that are whey-based. And now you have a plant-based one, and it does taste good. I love to mix it either just 2 scoops with some milk, or, like I said, putting it in a smoothie. That is Bailey and I's kind of thing to do every day. Our guest on this episode, Meb Keflezighi, relied on UCAN for energy and recovery as he trained to win the New York, Boston marathons and also to compete in the London and Rio Olympics. So, it's not just me saying this, but Meb loves it. Now, if you visit generationucan.com, you can try it now and you can save 25% off your first order with code TINAMUIR25. And if you're already a UCAN user, you can save 15% with code TINAUCAN15. So that's TINAMUIR25 if you are a first-time user, or you can use TINAUCAN15 at generationucan.com. I absolutely love it. I think you will too. Go get yourself some. You will not regret it.
You can do so many things that are indoors. And I don't want to be a salesman here, but there's a book called Meb Keflezighi that I wrote with Scott Douglas. There's a lot of exercises that you can do inside the house without living, not going to the gym and things like that. And you will be back. It's just a matter of time. And if you are able to go run, don't kill yourself because you don't know what the next race is going to be. So don't work too hard, but go outside, get exercise in because it's going to be a stress relief. Go outside, and don't take that for granted because there's a lot of people that can't get out of the house. So this is a win-win situation in terms of exercise to just say, hey, I'm going to be the best that I can doing indoor stuff or going outside. Whereas people who are sick, think of that. I want to be able to do it for the person that cannot breathe right now. I want to be able to the person who cannot walk anymore. So when you go out, you don't take things for granted.
Yes, thank you. That is helpful. And like Meb said, even it doesn't have to be what's on your schedule, doesn't even have to be as long as you were going to do. It can just be getting out there for something. That is enough. So thank you for that. So this is going to be a bit of an off-topic thing, but I heard the podcast you did on the Eat for Endurance podcast saying that you knew Jonah, who was the boy UCAN Superstarch was created for. I asked UCAN about it, and they said that you went to Jonah's school. So, yeah, again, for the listeners, UCAN was originally created for a boy named Jonah, and Meb can explain it better than I can, to basically keep him alive. But you went to his school to do a talk. You went to celebrate his 13th birthday. You've been to his home several times. And you went to the wedding of the CEO of UCAN, Shoba, her son. So I was amazed to learn that this athlete-sponsor relationship goes so far beyond just working with a brand. And actually, UCAN told me that without you, they don't know if they would have ever entered the running space. So did you know that last part, that you played that pivotal of a role in UCAN? And many listeners may think, wow, like I know Meb's a big fan of UCAN, as am I, as I've talked about many times, but I'm curious if you knew just how important you were to this brand. And I also want to thank you on behalf of myself for bringing UCAN into the running world. But did you know about just how much of an impact you had on UCAN?
Well, no, I'm just happy to be on Team Jonah. He's the original person who his parents, David and Wendy Fettelman, were staying up at night trying to help their son survive. And, to hear that story. And when I was introduced in 2009, I fell in love with that story. And with the name You Can Now, but before was Generation You Can. And I said, you know what, this is an era where X generation can say, I can believe I can do things. And to hear Jonah's survival story and to be part of his team meant a lot for me. And yes, it is not just a dotted line contract or signature, but for me to be able to go to speak to his school or be at the Fettelman's home and be able to attend Shoba's son wedding in California was huge. But, it's a family thing. It's a family community that are entrenched and known what's happening in daily life. And to know that Jonah got accepted to college and the early admission is huge, here he's talking about survival when we first started and whatnot, and now he's going to college and, called them and left them a voicemail, stuff like that is, you do genuinely with the best that you can. And I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the secret weapon of You Can. They helped me, gave me just like Skechers did, give me a second resurgence to my career. I would have retired 12 years ago. But because of their support and their commitment and allow me to have the career that I have. So I'm definitely encouraged by the kind word they said, but they've also been pivotal in my career, just as Skechers has been, You Can has been there for me when I needed it most.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that for listeners that may seem off topic, but I really just wanted to ask Meb about that because I thought that was absolutely amazing, just going so far beyond. And, I'd love to kind of dig into the sponsor relationship thing you just mentioned there about, for you, Skechers and UCAN were two of the pivotal ones. But I'm sure most of our listeners know that, despite these successes in your career, kind of you mentioned the resurgence of your running career, the second part, I guess, Nike not renewing your long-term running contract in 2011. Now, on most other podcasts you've been on, people have been very hesitant to mention any moves that they've made, which moves that they've made that haven't seemed ethical. But things have changed a lot. People have spoken out about it. But maybe you could tell us, if you're comfortable, about how that felt during that time, knowing that they didn't value you enough to take you on. And then from there, what it did mean when some other brands said, you know what, they may not believe in you, but we do.
Oh, absolutely. It was a tough moment for me. It was probably in terms of running career. I know I got injured. I was low, but my self-worth was devastated. And, a lot of bad thoughts goes through your head when that happens because you believe you prime yourself on helping resurgence of U.S. distance running, whether it was getting a silver medal for our country or winning New York after 27 years or winning silver after 28 years. And you think, you know what, you done your justice to be the best that you can. And you always dream. I think every athlete dream from, if not 95%, I would think, to wear that swoosh on their chest because you made it, and when you have backed it up with action, you think I remember proposing them to want to be an ambassador for the sport of running and for track and field and cross country. I would say I would even commit myself driving from San Diego all the way to San Francisco, visiting different high schools. That's what my love is. But I didn't get the okay and said, I got the, we don't want you anymore kind of thing. And I remember I was very frustrated, and, they expect a lot out of me with contract less than 50% what I earned through American Record and, or bonuses. So it was a tough moment for me. And I remember my brother Howie, this is, that it's tough, but I'm gonna prove them wrong. And, I remember I was running Mammoth Lakes in the snow. Why would I want to do this? Even when I get paid, I don't get paid. I know my God-given talent is there. And that 520 that I ran in 7th grade might change my life, and it still continues to change my life, because at that point when I was running Mammoth Lakes in February of 2011, I was so committed to the sport. I drove on with my wife and kids on January 1st, driving up to Mammoth Lakes. So I could be in training camp, so I can be in position to win the Boston Marathon. That was what my goal was in 2011. And 7 days later or 6 days later, the contract was off the table. So it's devastating, but never let others define you what your life is going to be. And yes, as hurtful, as devastating as it was, it opened up so many things after that. Skechers came to play where they gave me the second resurgence of running. UCAN was there, Powerball was there, I think, and New York Athletic ended up coming on board. Maui Gym came out on board. See, the compression socks came on board, and Epson Watch, and so thankful for all those other sponsors that KT Tape, even Bridgestone and United Airline, and I mean so many other came to help me be who I am, because they saw the worth that other company like it didn't see. They saw the worth that whether it's my smile, or whether it is how fast I have run, or whether it is winning medals or winning New York. And guess what? After all that, I made 2 Olympic team, and I won the most prestigious marathon in the world. But, never can question my work ethic, because I badly wanted to win, whether it's Olympic medal or whether it is New York or Boston. But don't let somebody else define you or what you're going to be. And if you work hard, it might not happen next year or the following year, but it happened almost at 39 years old. And for me, that was the solidification that my running career was completed. I was on this earth to inspire and to have influence in the sport of running. And, could I have retired the next year? Absolutely. But I also want to be able to make sure that my family was set for a long time.
Yeah. And I think you've continued to do that even beyond your prime running years. And now you continue to inspire people and sharing stories like that, and how they can be applied to everyone listening. As you said, it's not just about you and specific brands. It's about, not letting people define you and not letting other people kind of dictate your life, even though, yes, you admitted it is hard at times. And there's obviously a period in there where you do kind of mourn and grieve over that feeling and have that doubt in self-worth. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. And have you ever wondered how your life would be different had they offered you a contract and continued it on? Like, do you think everything kind of works out for a reason with that not being the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked about Meb Keflezighi earlier and Run to Overcome, my autobiography, and 26 marathons. I always wonder how life would have been. And, if I have to do all over again, my 22, 23-year-old getting out of college, I was in a verge of going with Asics or Nike. The reason that I went with Nike was, one, they said it would pay me for the rest of for the whole year, which I tell Asics if they match half of that, I would be with them. But also the reason I went with Nike is if I make it big, which thank God I made it, I want to be in a position with a company that can have exposure with me. And that's absolutely one of the reasons that I went, because Asics at the time, when I said 98, it was not the Asics that it is now. But I was so close. Tracy Goodrich was her name. I remember the lady from Asics. She made a call to Japan, and she said, if say yes to give you half of what Nike is saying, I'll do it. And unfortunately, the Japan headquarters said no. So a lot of things that happened different. And now, what would happen with Nike? I mean, I was begging them to just let me be in 2012 to retire. I signed up New York City Marathon to be my last marathon in 2013, but due to the cancellation is the reason I kept going. But it would have been over a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm glad in that way that that they did do that, so we got to see this kind of magic that you brought in those final years. And did anyone ever say to you that they shouldn't have underestimated you?
No, there's no dialogue. It's hard. No. I mean, I do the handshake I ran into the people that had the decision makers. I treat others with respect. I give them a handshake, but internally I'm burning up because I badly wanted to represent the company to the highest level that I can, that I'm capable of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that too. So, you've mentioned a lot of companies there. You've always, in everything you do, you make it clear that it's very important for you to shout out to people, not just your family. Every interview I hear from you, you thank in some way your wife, Udanos, but you also make this effort to talk about your sponsors. So for people listening who may roll their eyes at you or I talking about sponsors, can you just take a moment to remind people why it's so important for athletes to have sponsors and people that believe in them, why it's not just about you, the athlete yourself, but your whole team is such a massive part of what you do?
Absolutely. I mean, the sponsorship that we have is a trickle effect to what goes on. I mean, if I am an ambassador for Skechers and other companies like UCAN or CEP and Maui Gym, and they want to be able to say, hey, when I'm at their booth, they don't mind if I talk about Skechers if I'm at Maui Gym, because it's hand in hand, and they more exposure that you give them, the better they're going to be off. But at the same time, it is so important because they care for you. And if they do care for you, people might be waiting for me for 45 minutes to an hour. Why? Because I want to be able to treat every runner with dignity and respect. And they tell me thank you to me, and I tell them thank you to them because they're the one that waited 45 minutes to an hour. Mm-hmm. It's a mutual respect. And I'm just thankful for the people, like you said, my wife, my brother, Howie, and manager, and Coach Bob Larson, people on the bike. They do it for the passion to help me execute my goals, but they don't have to be there. I could be a lonely person running in I don't know where, in Mammoth or San Diego, but they care for me, like to come and say, hey, we're going to help you be the best that you can. And there's a saying in Eritrea, and it's called Awad Nahafash, which is victory to the masses. And that's what happened for me. Hopefully that's what people look at, the people's champion, just because I do things, I do from the bottom of my heart to the best that I can. And anybody who have come across of me have some kind of impact, whether it's just say, hey, good luck to the next Olympic, or good luck on winning New York, or great job on that third place finish. Those are powerful words versus, and allow you to say, you know what, that person believed in me, and there's a few other things like we discussed that probably had negative impact. They just say, oh, I wish they gave me a little bit more support because I could have done even bigger.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I just want to attest for anyone listening, I have seen Meb in action after the live show we did do. We stood there for probably an hour. Every person that came up, Meb, didn't just do the going through the motions of thank you and then smiling for a photo. He asked people about the shirt they were wearing, or like kids, he knelt down to the ground to get on their level and asked them about whatever it was that they seemed to be interested in. It was an eye-opening experience for me to see Meb, and I want to just remind people that Meb isn't just saying this stuff, he genuinely lives it day after day. So thank you for doing that.
Well, Tina, thank you for those kind words, but their runners are loyal, disciplined, and driven. And I want to thank on your show, thank you to all the runners. Sometimes they know me so well that they would bring me snacks because I know I'm the last one to leave, or they would bring me books, or here's a thing for a nice note for your wife to allow her to be here, or they will give me books that from their local community and stuff like that, or they will give me a shirt that says, hey, here's a t-shirt or for your girls, or there's a little headbands for your girls. Because why? Because you treat people with respect. And if you do that, never burn bridges. No matter how difficult situations are, just be there and be you. Like you always say, be real as much as you can. And that's what distance running is. You can't say, oh, I ran 7 miles when, you done 7 miles, you did 7 miles. You can't say when you run 5 miles, I did 7. That doesn't work. They're precisely to the point that says, oh, I ran 6.8, or I ran, 12 and a half or whatever. That's, and the type of personality does come into respect each other and mutual respect, to just say, hey, I just ran 10 miles and you know exactly how far that is and exactly how painful that is. And whether it was on a 38 degree or 78 degree, that, oh, that was a tough day, or, oh, did you enjoy it? This cooler is better for running. So you can have a dialogue constantly going.
Thank you to Tifosi for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, what does Tifosi mean, you wonder? Well, I just looked it up, and actually Tifosi is the Italian word for super fan, which is exactly who they are and who they make their eyewear for. Their mission is to provide technically advanced eyewear to enthusiasts of all sports and outdoor activities. That includes us. They design, test, and torture their products to enhance our sport, and Tifosi's Swank Series sunglasses beat out the competition with these premium features that no other brands have at $25. Now, I know many of you within the community have been asking me about sunglasses lately, and I'm excited to have something to tell you, finally. I had seen other friends wearing Tifosis around, and I'd been like, what is that you're wearing? I'd never heard of the brand, and I was pretty excited to see it. The lenses are polycarbonate, which means they don't buckle under pressure. They have an integrated hinge, which means the arms snap open and close without pulling your hair as you run. So frustrating when that happens. Swank Series glasses come in Wayfarer and Aviator styles, and they have dozens of colors. So many colors that when you mix and match them in their custom shop, you have a pair that is totally unique to you from thousands of possible combinations. Tifosi also makes wraparound frames with adjustable fits and interchangeable or variable tint lenses, which makes it great for running in different light conditions. As we know, that happens quite a lot with summer. We are going to be kind of going into these summer months where that is very important. You probably already have running sunglasses, but you can never have too many shades. Make your next pair Tifosi and you will never go back to anything else. Now, my friends, I have a 10% off code for you. If you use code TINA at tifosioptics.com, I'll spell that out for you. That's TIFOSIOPTICS. I'll spell that again. TIFOSIOPTICS, tifosioptics.com, and you use code TINA, you can get 10% off your order. Now, just for, I know that you guys are going to ask me anyway, the brands that I like, I love the Swank series. There's a Swank SL and just a Swank regular. Those are both great. And I like the Svagos. I am more into kind of casual looking sunglasses. So those are definitely the ones for me. If you do want performance ones, they definitely have some of those too. But I absolutely love these Tifosi optics. And I'm so excited that I finally have an offer for you too. Go to tifosioptics.com and use code TINA for 10% off.
Never burn bridges. No matter how difficult situations are, just be there and be you. Like you always say, be real as much as you can. And that's what distance running is. You can't say, oh, I ran 7 miles when, you done 7 miles, you did 7 miles. You can't say when you run 5 miles, I did 7. That doesn't work. They're precisely to the point that says, oh, I ran 6.8, or I ran, 12 and a half or whatever. That's, and the type of personality does come into respect each other and mutual respect, to just say, hey, I just ran 10 miles and you know exactly how far that is and exactly how painful that is. And whether it was on a 38 degree or 78 degree, that, oh, that was a tough day, or, oh, did you enjoy it? This cooler is better for running. So you can have a dialogue constantly going.
Absolutely. And actually on that note, Meb, you just reminded me that, now you are quote unquote retired and you do a lot of things for the community, giving back, running with other people. Have you noticed, because I definitely have. Once I kind of slowed down, moved away from the elite scene, and now being pregnant, especially so. As it takes you longer to cover distances, in many ways, it's actually harder for many of the listeners who have to be out there doing a marathon for 4 or 5 hours. Or, I was a guide for a visually impaired athlete, Joe, in December, and I ran a half marathon with him. I was pregnant, so that probably added to this as well. But I ran a half marathon with him as part of his first marathon, and it took us, I think, 2 hours and 20 something minutes. And it was quite hard on my body because I wasn't used to, being out there for that long. So have you noticed that aspect of things? And has it given you any more respect for people who are out there for extended periods? Because you and I can maybe do a marathon in 2.5 hours, but it's a whole different world being out there to concentrate for 4, 5, 6 hours.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, you have a mutual respect for them to say, to say, sometimes I do half marathons. I'm not going to lie that I just did full marathons, but I am disciplined enough to say, hey, they want to run. I paced my brother an hour and 53 minutes for his first marathon. And now you think you're at the 8-mile mark, or you say, I could be done right now and I need to push it up. But I understand why you're doing it for. And for me, it was very hard to learn English. Very, very difficult. And to write a paper, it took a lot of drive, a lot of discipline, a lot of correction. And I look at that way for the people that run the marathons or half marathons. For me, it's easy to say, hey, my PR is 101 for the half and 208 for the full marathon. But that's what my God-given talent is. But for them to be able to say, hey, before work or during lunch or in the evening to get that best they can, whether it's 5 miles or 4 miles, to squeeze it in so they can be breaking 5 hours, so they can be breaking 6 hours or whatever it might be. Oh, you understand, you respect it. And the more I run more and more with group, I love it personally, but at the same time, I understand that their God-given talent was not running, but they're there to be the best they can so they can be an example to their other significant or their kids or their community.
Yeah. It's been very eye-opening for me as well to see that. And I've just got so much more respect for people than I think I gave as an elite runner when, you kind of see yourself as, we work harder than anyone else. So, we've got that. But in a lot of ways, it's a lot harder to fit your training in, like you said, with a full-time job or with a family or whatever it may be that people have to negotiate their way around.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating story to hear. So when I'm doing meet and greet, I hear people to say, I lost 80 pounds. I lost 120 pounds. And for them to be able to just say, this is going to be my second marathon. I said, great job. Keep at it. So you give them positive enforcement and just said, wow, before you know it, you're going to be trying to qualify for Boston. You have something to shoot for them. And they're like, well, it's so fun. I was, and for me, they bring me pictures, what was before, or when they first heard I was on a couch and watching your Boston victory. And then they said, you know what? You inspired me to start a marathon, but they were never runners. So you hear those stories and they touch your soul and your heart because whether you met them before or you didn't, you have an impact. And that's very big responsibility.
Yeah. Okay, so you actually led that in quite nicely to something else I wanted to ask you about, which is where I mentioned challenging questions. This is really where I'm going to test you a little bit. So again, on that Eat for Endurance podcast, just to give you some background, I had a very disordered relationship with food during my elite career. I kind of had to make some massive changes. I think you know a little bit about this, but to get my body healthy so that I could start a family. But when I heard you on this podcast, you talked about some things that you did during your kind of peak years. Like you mentioned about maybe drinking a glass of water before your meals, or kind of sending some of your portion of food back so that you didn't eat too much because you were trying to maintain weight. Now, I asked Cara Goucher the same question here because, I said to her, she talked about cutting out basically like her wine and her desserts and things in the few weeks before a race. And I asked her, looking back, do you think that was necessary? Do you think you needed to do that? Or did you kind of see it as your body needed that food, it needed the extra, and it wouldn't have really done any harm to be 5 3, 5, 10 pounds heavier. Like looking back on your own career, does any part of you think that maybe you were letting your mind control your eating more than kind of what your body needed essentially? Has any part of you ever wondered that?
No, first is everybody's different. Let's understand that. And, but I do understand that for me, I know what worked for me. And I remember when I had a pelvic stretch fracture, I consulted with a doctor and she said, I need to be at 138 pounds. And I said, if I say 138 pounds, I cannot do what I do for a living.
That was gaining weight?
138 is versus 121, 122, or 125 is what I like to be. You're talking about 13 pounds to 17 pounds for my profession.
Okay.
But I have to do it, if you ask me in 2007, before the trials, I would say yes, I would have changed. But any other time, I would not, because the difference being, in 2007, I wanted to win my first marathon ever, and I thought it would be perfect to do at the Olympic trials in New York in November. And I stayed from July all the way to November. I mean, you could even say June to November. I was the best summer I ever had. But guess what? Not having those extra calories cost me an Olympic team.
Mm-hmm.
And said that, but for the other times, I was under 119 for most of that time. But I figured out, something you got to learn from your mistakes. So eventually to 122, 121, and for doing it for at least for like 1 month worked for me. But I did not deprive myself. Afterwards, I said, eat whatever you want. I would, as Kara said, I would probably eliminate it like when I would gain to 133, 135 on my off season, and then bring it down slowly by eliminating sugar or don't have sweets. I never was, as an athlete, I was never into drinks. So that was not an issue for me, but I got it down slowly. And as I increased my mileage, I dropped my weights and then eventually allowed me to be, the champion that I became. But everybody's different, for my height. And if I was on the track, I would have probably kept a little bit less weight because, in the marathon, you could have a little extra calories and fat, and it can be useful at mile 20 or 23. So
do you think looking back, you did still do have a healthy relationship in that, the number on the scale didn't dictate you mentioned very specific numbers there. Does any part of you think that, had you not had a scale or no access to a scale, do you think anything would have been different?
Oh, most definitely would have been different. I mean, I am pretty precise with numbers and I'm kind of crazy with numbers. But yeah, I mean, if I didn't have the scale, it's like having a Garmin. If you say, I'm going to run 17 mile longer, if you have 17 mile on the run, but your body tells you only run at 12 and a half or so, or 13 miles, you are under training yourself by 4 miles or 2.5, 3 miles. So it's a guessing game that you have. Whereas for me I was serious about my weight, and I scaled myself as a professional. I especially when I was in Mammoth, I would weigh myself, and I need to know what I need. I didn't weigh the food, but I weighed before a run and after a run, so I can monitor what was going on.
Mm-hmm. And you think that overall helped you with do you think had you not had access to a scale, it would have been damaging to you?
I think so for me. Okay. And the reason is because when I was a student, I talk a lot about in my books. When I was at UCLA, I would go eat, and because I have a big appetite, I have no problem eating, and I love to eat. So, and unfortunately, it doesn't go with distance running. It might go with other sports, but it does not go with distance running. And having known that changed for me, the Exercise Physiology 5, 97. When I did that, it was an eye opener for me. And ever since, I think my career has done very, very well. I would not change a minute of it. But at the same time, sometimes you go a little too crazy. And I did that in November of 2007, but the summer of 2007, get ready for the Olympic trials because, I was, like I said, I was second at the Olympic Games, second in New York, third in Boston, third in New York. I'm like, I was craving for that win, and I overdid it.
Now, have you transitioned away from that? Do you manage to let go of numbers now, or is that still something that you kind of keep an eye on, even, at this point where performance and the numbers don't matter as much?
They don't matter anymore. Or for me, as soon as I moved to Florida about 9 months ago, I weighed myself maybe twice in the meantime, just more of a family thing than anything else. I just know.
So it was just a performance thing for you.
It was a performance thing. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being honest with that. So then, raising 3 girls, that had to have been pretty eye-opening in itself, like seeing, the way media portrays girls, the things that, you see actresses and actors, the guys are asked about, how did you feel playing this role? And the women are asked, how did you get in shape? That kind of thing. How do you think about raising your 3 girls in an environment where they don't pick up on habits about restricting their food or about thinking about the way they look? What do you do to make sure that you, as a male, are kind of giving them respect and showing them that, there's more to them than the way they look?
It's not easy, but I just try to empower them. My wife does a great job, so she spends more time with them. But empower them to be the best they can be. I tell them they're beautiful, they're strong, they're academically, athletically, and you don't need to put makeup. I'm a big opponent of putting in makeup. You are who you are. Have I put makeup? People sometimes play with my head, whatever, shiny when I go to cameras. But for me, it is who I am, and I try to tell those girls they're beautiful. And I have disagreement with them and being a parent, absolutely, I do. And but at the same time, just encourage them to just say, hey, make sure you eat breakfast, the most important thing, the meal of the day. Make sure you eat lunch at school, whether you need to buy or you just want to make lunch and take it to school. It's up to you, whatever is easier for you. And the same thing with dinner. Most of the time we all eat dinner together, and that's thanks to my wife here, Danos, and be able to do those things. We can talk all certain things. There is a women figure or work at school or their sport or what's going on in class. That usually is been having 3 girls. They always fight for their time. So the conversations, I don't say much, but I just hear them what they have to say.
Yeah. And have you seen inconsistencies and differences between the opportunities you see for men and women, looking at it through the lens of what this world your 3 girls are going to grow up in?
For me, it's a tough question because I don't look at genders. The sport has taught me, or race for me. I mean, ever since I was 10 years old, I was in a melting pot in Italy and coming to the United States. That was it. And then when I went to UCLA, that's the reason I chose UCLA. It was academics, and also the diversity was important to me. So I'm in a sport where, there's 500 meter for women, there's 500 for men. There's a 10K, there's a 10K, there's the same prize money, the same prize money. So I try not to see as much, there's some roles that are different, but at the same time we have another sport of running. It taught me the equal part of men and women, and boy and girl. I grew up with a family. We had chores that were different, but we all contributed to the family functions. Whether it's cleaning toilet or it's, cleaning the windows or cleaning the sofa. And then my sister did the cooking, but she never did the other cleaning. So it was something that we all did, and I have nothing to compare and have a point to say this is what your role should be. It's like, hey, be you. Be the best that you can. And if you put the effort, mom and dad are happy.
Well, that's good to hear, and always good lessons to learn there. And then what about broader? So if we think about, just in general within the running world and beyond, there's a lot more conversations going on about topics that before weren't really, talked about or were an issue. Do you see this as a good thing, that there's more and more kind of conversations going on to try and include people and to make the world better, and if yes, which ones have kind of meant the most to you that you've seen changing in the last 5 or so years?
I mean, I'm not up to date to all the conversation about here and there. I see it on Twitter or things like that. But no, the more we can bring, I'm all about learning. I'm a human. I might not be perfect. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but I hope not to make the same mistakes twice. I pride myself into that, whether it's racing, whether it's as a husband or the father and whatnot. But if it's brought out to my attention, I'm a type A personality. I will make an effort to be adjacent to it. Is it going to be easy? Slam dunk? Probably not. I mean, my wife can attest to that, but at the same time, if it's brought to my attention or that needs to be brought to attention, let's bring it. Let's talk about it. And hopefully it will take us forward. And, I come from a culture that is not as, in terms of chores, that is 50-50 or whatnot. People have, women have role and whatnot into doing things. And it's changing now, but I didn't grow up in that environment per se in my early stage of when I was, till I left Eritrea until I was 10 years old. After that is, coming to the NSA that opened up, hey, everybody goes to school, do work hard. If you want to be a doctor, be a doctor. If you want to be a lawyer, be a lawyer. Whereas in Eritrea, that women are not as encouraged to go to school. My mom never went to school. And I know early on cousins would go back and we see this Western mentality and then we go to a third world country. She is 12-year-old. She should be thinking about getting married. I'm like, no, you can't do that. Let her go to education, and those things. So, I talk about it and I'm not proud of it. My mom was engaged when she was 5 or 6 and then she got married when she was 12, but it hasn't worked for my parents. With a lot of sacrifice, I think they're happily married. But thank God for both of them understanding. And but I can't. Sometimes my head, not that I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, my mom was married when my daughter said she just turned 12 this last week 2 days ago. And that she's in 6th grade and you can study for life. So it's different things, and it's, but the more we can bring it up, and I think especially the more women can get educated, and I'm up for that, and just say, hey, whether it's at a household or nationally or internationally or as a candidate for president, I think if the woman is going to be the best job at that, give her the opportunity. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, you've absolutely shown that in every way, through the way that you live your life, the way that you do support women, and, raising your daughters. It's as evidenced every time we see it. So thank you for being, someone who does embody that and want to continue to raise women up, even if it's not kind of drawing attention to the fact, but just through your actions, which is kind of you in a nutshell. It's just lead by example. So thank you for that. And anyone listening, if you want to learn more about this kind of topic, especially with women, women's rights around the world, Moment of Lift, I think, by Melissa Gates. I read that book recently. It was really, really good. So I recommend that. Okay, Meb, I've got 2 questions from listeners. Thank you to my Patreon listeners who submitted some questions here. Alison would like to know, can you give us 3 tips for training as a masters athlete?
Alison, thanks for your question. 3 lessons is, I think, 1 is get out of the door, make accountable with somebody. As maybe high school, college teammates and whatnot. When you make somebody accountable to meet somebody, you're going to show up. And 2, I think people, if you're going to run 6 miles, I'd rather see you run 5 miles and use that 1 mile time, whether it's 8-minute pace, 10-minute pace, 12-minute pace. Use it, half of it before you go for a run stretch and 1/2 afterward. And as a master athlete, I think nutrition is important. I think eat yourself your favorite meals, but at the same time, our muscles not as toned. So with nutrition and push-ups or sit-ups and things like that can get us back to hopefully a better shape.
Yes, great. Thank you. And actually related to your second point there, my second question was from Jack, who said, Meb for Mortals has so many good drills, stretches and strengthening exercises. What would you recommend as 2 to 4 things to always try and fit in if you have limited time before and after a run?
Yeah, Jack, thanks for your support on that. I think core is important. posture, especially if you run a half marathon or longer to full marathon. You don't want to break down. So I would say, as I alluded to the previous question to Allison, if you can run one less miles, you can stretch, you can do push-ups, but also it helps you be healthy. The more consistent you could do, don't say, oh, I only got this time, I'm going to run 10 miles in and then shower and go. You did the workout 10 miles and you shower, you go to work or do whatever function you have. But what you didn't know is the residual of tightness or not stretching. If you drive on a car, you're going to be sore when you get out of the car. You're like, oh, what did I do that for? So I think the stretching and also doing the core is important.
Now, Meb, that's really, really hard for runners to give up miles. I mean, I'm just thinking about this myself. Like, my husband has suggested many a time to skipping running, like a mile of running for warm up and stuff. But you are asking a lot. That's you're really challenging my listeners here with asking them to give up some actual running time to do some exercises. But we'll see if they listen.
But no, Tina, this is where if I have to tell myself again. There is no time to just say, unless you are injured and you're coming back and you said, you know what, I got to make that decision whether to go 20 miles my long run or 22. And then you should go for the 22. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But on a day-to-day or weekly or whatnot, I don't say, looking back on my career, I don't say, I wish I run more miles.
Yeah.
In fact, I say, I wish I took 1 week off.
So
because
true.
As a type A personality, we want to go mileage. But if you can take a day off, or a week off here and there, but when you have a little knack and injuries, it can give you a resurgence of another strength of your body needed it.
Definitely. And I'm not saying I disagree with you. I absolutely agree with you.
But it's hard. It's hard to make the decision.
To put into practice.
For myself, I say it's very hard to do, but you got to just say, I got to do it.
The run and shower option is way more tempting. But as you said, looking back, you're not going to regret you're not going to wish, wish I did 3 more miles each week. You're going to say, I wish I would have, taken the time to do those little things that could have kept me running longer or could have kept me from injuries. So yeah, thank you for that. All right, Meb, I'm going to put lots of links in the show notes, but for anyone, tell them about your books, which, maybe just a little brief thing about each one, and then where people can find you if they want to follow you, if they somehow do not already.
I appreciate that opportunity. Ron Meb is in my Instagram and Twitter account. And my first book is Run to Overcome with Dick Patrick. It's an autobiography, the humble beginning from Eritrea, the journey that my dad has to walk over 225 miles to save his life so he can save his wife and 5 kids. And then also after I won the Boston Marathon, people kind of said, how did you do that at 2 weeks, almost to 39 years old? I was 2 weeks shy of that, and people were curious how I did it. And I always said, doing the small things that make a big difference. And many people have attributed to the Meb for Mortals, the drills, the exercise, the nutrition, the race preparation, all those things. And that got the New York bestseller. Along that comes the 26 marathon. And my first marathon, I said first and last. I never want to do it again, but marathon is very humbling, but if you enjoy it and keep doing it, it's going to be great. And on 26 marathon, which also got the New York Times bestseller, is what I have learned about faith, identity, running, and life from my 26 marathon career. So I would appreciate if you guys haven't got the read, especially at this time. If you are indoors, a great way to get motivated.
Yeah, definitely a good time to catch up on some reading. All right, Meb, thank you so much for just being this bright light in this world that you are. Thank you. We appreciate you every single time we hear from you. And it was an honor to get you on this podcast. So thank you so much.
Tina, thanks for having me. And to your listeners, best wishes and keep up the great work you're doing.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. So good. That man is just the most generous, kind, like warm-hearted man you could imagine. And I'm so honored we got that conversation with him. And I'm thankful that what's going on right now did not kind of derail this conversation. And we were actually able to get it in. And yeah, it's strange for me recording the outro for this episode, knowing that it's going to be coming out next week. So you will hear this pretty soon after it came out. And I hope his advice with regards to what's going on right now was also helpful for you because, you know, I know it is a time of uncertainty, but as I mentioned in the episode, he's a great example of what can happen if you kind of trust that things will work out for the best and, you know, allow them to unfold. There's some really good things in front of you. I want to take this moment actually to mention, if you are struggling, I did make a coronavirus guide for runners, and some of the information about the virus itself is a bit outdated because it's probably 3 weeks old, but the kind of how to replan the rest of your year, how to kind of get going with things might actually be helpful for you. So you can go to tinamuir.com/COVID-19 guide. That's tinamuir.com/COVID-19 guide. That's the written version, and you just remove the word guide. So tinamuir.com/COVID-19 to listen to the podcast version. But the guide, the printout, well, the PDF version has a worksheet for you to fill out, which I think would be helpful for people. Now, I just want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this episode and remind you to go check them out. You checking them out sends a massive high five to me. It tells the brand that I'm valuable. You know, Meb talked about how important it is for us to have brands, have a team. And my team is very important. And these brands supporting me says a lot and allows me to do what I am doing. All of this that you get, everything on the podcast is free. So any support you can give towards these companies, the better. Okay, so thank you firstly to Generation UCAN. We mentioned them in the episode. And Generation UCAN in particular, they have been with me for many years. So they have been really supportive of me and also Meb, as you heard. But they have supported me through this year. They are supporting me through this year despite me taking a few months off. They are continuing to work with me and, I really appreciate them for that. Now, with that, you can use the following coupons. If you have not purchased Generation UCAN before, you can use code TinaMuir25 to get 25% off. If you're already a UCAN fan, you can use Tina UCAN 15 to get 15% off. I do also have codes for UK and Canada. So be sure to go to the brands page on my website at tinamuir.com to go find those two codes if you are in the UK or in Canada. Also want to thank Tifosi for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. I'm really excited that we are working with Tifosi, and I think you are going to love those sunglasses. I absolutely love running in them. They're really comfortable. Molly Seidel ran in them for her marathon trials, second place. So they're definitely some sunglasses that you could be proud to wear with the kind of result that she had. If you use code TINA, T-I-N-A, at tifosi.com, you can get 10% off. That's code TINA, T-I-N-A, at tifosi.com, and you can get 10% off. Now, the final sponsor for this episode was Vital Farms. You know, there's delicious eggs that we get in the grocery store. They're nice and bright and yellow and make really great omelets and frittatas and whatever else you want to make. Obviously, cakes being a priority. I absolutely love their eggs. And now they have come out with ghee, which is so good for cooking, especially for me, like sweet potatoes and potatoes, roasting them in ghee. It just steps them up a level. I also love making Shalane and Elisa's chickpea veggie burgers with ghee as the oil, and they are delicious. So you can get a year's free supply. You can enter to win a year's free supply, free entry, by going to vitalfarms.com/ghee. That's G-H-E-E. So that's vitalfarms.com/ghee. So next week we have Alison Desir on the show. Alison has done so much for the running community, particularly those who are African American, but she's also kind of done a lot for women. And she's just a wonderful person, just really someone we should all be looking up to. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that. My friends, I hope you are staying well. And if I can do anything to help you in the meantime, please let me know. Be sure to go listen to that episode with Michael Gervais, that bonus episode I did last week. If you are struggling with kind of staying on top of the anxiety and the kind of panic that's going around right now, you can find that at tinamuir.com/bonusmg. And on that note, you can go to tinamuir.com/episode 180 to get all those links I just mentioned throughout the various things in this little message to you. So I hope you are doing well, my friends, and I'll see you next Friday.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.